Hello and welcome back to the Perfect Game. Today we're going to be playing some of the new standard format because it finally hit Magic Online. And we're going to be playing kind of a sweet brew. There's been a lot of hype about Green Devotion. You know, Nykthos, lots of ramp, Genesis Hydra, stuff like that. And most of the hype has been around Frontier Siege and Ugin. And they're both great cards, but I'm going to go a different route. And I found this this spicy little brew that is, actually it's a Temur Ascendancy combo deck based around Temur Sabertooth. And I'll give you a quick overview of how it works. What it is Temur Ascendancy gives all your creatures haste. So you need a copy of that in play. You need a copy of Temur Sabertooth in play. And you need either Voyaging Satyr plus Nykthos, or some builds use Karametra's Acolyte. But I found that Karametra's Acolyte is basically a giant do-nothing if you don't have the combo. And there's a really bad draw in the late game, especially against like Abzan mid-range and Abzan aggro. All the decks with a lot of removal that are putting some amount of pressure on you early. You just never want to draw Karametra's Acolyte ever, so I cut them. So how the combo basically works is you have you get a total of 7 devotion out or more. Oops, get over there. Right? So you have 7 devotion. And you tap Nykthos. Wait, hold on, 1, 2, yeah. You tap Nykthos to make 7. Voyaging Satyr untaps Nykthos. You tap Nykthos again. You use 2 mana to bounce the Voyaging Satyr with Temur Sabertooth. You replay the Voyaging Satyr, and because Ascendancy gives it haste, you untap Nykthos, tap it again, etc. And you just, as long as you have these guys and then 3 more devotion somewhere, you can go infinite. You can make infinite green mana, and then because Ascendancy has blue and red in it, you can make infinite blue or red mana by untapping Nykthos with Voyaging Satyr as well, once you have a lot of green. I say infinite, but I mean arbitrarily large. Key distinction, you can't actually go infinite, but you can basically do it as many times as you want to. So once that happens, you just need an Eidolon of Blossoms, or another 4-power creature. It can be another Sabertooth, it can be Polychronos, it can be Genesis Hydra, and you just draw your deck. Because once you have infinite mana, you bounce any one of these 4 with your Sabertooth, and then you replay them. Draw a card off of Ascendancy, or Eidolon triggers and draws you a card. If you have a Genesis Hydra, you just need to cast it the one time, because what you're really looking for is an Nylea, God of the Hunt. All of your creatures have haste, but if your opponent has enough blockers, that can get problematic, and you don't want to really have to draw your entire deck, even though you can. So Nylea is a great way to trample over. What you do if you just have the Genesis Hydra is you just make a ridiculous amount of mana, cast Genesis Hydra for X equals your entire library, flip over Nylea, attack with the like 36 haste trample Genesis Hydra for lethal, or what have you. So it's pretty the combo is really cool. But the deck, one of the key features of the deck is that the deck doesn't need the combo to win. It's just a solid ramp deck, even if you don't have the combo. And you end up with Temur Ascendancy and Eidolon of Blossoms. You end up being able to draw quite a few cards, and pull ahead of any deck that's just trying to attrition you out based on removal. Temur Sabertooth is a great draw late game because they can't really kill it with like traditional Hero's Downfall, Light Egg Strike, what have you, because you can bounce a creature in response, even if it's like an Elvish Mystic. So they either need 2 removal spells or an exile effect. And even if you just cast it on 4 in the early game with it vulnerable, they still can't let you untap with it. So they have to tap mana on their main phase, which for like a blue-black control deck gives you a window to resolve an Ascendancy or an Eidolon of Blossoms and start pulling ahead, or one of your sideboard cards if it's post-board. So the rest of the deck, I mean, you have your standard ramp package, 12 mana dorks, Voyaging Satyr, Elvish Mystic, Sylvan Caryatid. Hasn't really changed since the dawn of time. Caryatid has hexproof, and we need Voyaging Satyr for the combo, so Rattleclaw Mystic didn't get the include. But we have Coursers, obviously. And then it gets a little strange. You don't usually see Boon Satyrs in this type of lists, but because they trigger both Temur Ascendancy and Eidolon of Blossoms, it was worth having a couple. They're very good at kind of like they'll draw you a card no matter which engine you have in play, which it's nice. It adds a lot of consistency to the deck, which is it's kind of what the deck needed. Then of course the Temur Ascendancies, which are actually really good, just for haste, because with again if you're just top decking and you have an Ascendancy in play and you draw an Eidolon or any 4-power creature, you can just start to go crazy. Genesis Hydra is even better because sometimes it gets you 2 triggers. The haste means that you can just your opponent isn't ever really safe until they've killed you, or they have like a huge board plus Whip of Erebos. So that's it's actually a much more useful card, even when you're not comboing, than one might suspect. The Nylea for the combo kill, also just once you've assembled Devotion, it's a pretty sweet card, gives you guys trample, pumps them, what have you. If you have Devotion, it triggers both Eidolon of Blossoms and Temur Ascendancy. If you don't have Devotion, it still triggers Eidolon of Blossoms. So it's pretty nice. Fits into the engine as well as the actual combo. Eidolon of Blossoms is a card advantage engine. Lets you fight against attrition strategies that are trying to grind you out, or it lets you it helps us see more cards to assemble the combo faster against maybe a deck that's not trying to 1-for-1 us a lot with removal, but isn't doing much in the early game. So something like a Whip deck or another green Devotion deck, maybe. Eidolon helps us like go nuts and find the combo and just kill them, no matter what their draw is like, as long as they don't have a lot of removal. Polykratos is pretty standard in these lists. Is a great mana sink, 5/5 for 4, just a really solid card when you're playing with Nykthos and a lot of mana ramp. But we only really had room for 3 because we wanted to fit the Boon Satyrs in, and we want all 4 Sabertooths. Sabertooth is pretty excellent in this deck, actually. Another cool thing about Sabertooth is it lets us bounce Eidolon of Blossoms or Genesis Hydra to abuse their triggers. It's fantastic. If we have a lot of extra mana and like the board is kind of locked up, excuse me, it really lets us pull ahead and close the game out because of that value. It's tremendous value. Genesis Hydra is also pretty standard, but you get a couple of cool interactions. Genesis Hydra for 4 or 5 into Temur Ascendancy is awesome because the trigger resolves while Genesis Hydra is still in the stack. Ascendancy comes into play, then Genesis Hydra comes into play and triggers Ascendancy, so we get to draw a card. So it's basically a 3-for-1 with Hydra in that case. But if we already have a Temur Ascendancy out and we cast Genesis Hydra, it's a 4 for like 4 or 5 and hit Sabertooth, Polukranos, Boon Satyr, something like that. It's a 4-for-1. We get the Hydra's body, we get whatever we hit, and then we get 2 triggers off of Jeskai Ascendancy because they each trigger, or Temur Ascendancies, excuse me, because they each trigger when they come into play. So it's pretty crazy. Genesis Hydra is definitely more value in this deck than it is in most decks, although it can't hit Ugin or Hornet Queen because we're just not playing those. But it's very, very good casting it for 4 or 5 in this deck because you get so many value hits. You can hit Eidolon, Ascendancy already out. You can hit a bunch of other things. Just picking up a Polukranos or Sabertooth is great. Sabertooth gives you another shot next turn if you need it. Like all sorts of great stuff. The mana base is pretty standard. 4 bivouacs, 4 fetches, 4 pain lands and then the 1 of Mountain and Island to kind of splash our colors for Ascendancies and a couple of sideboard cards. I put in 1 Mana Confluence, which so far has not been a tremendous problem. It's been actually pretty nice. It just gives us another blue source and another red source without us shaving on green. So it's been pretty solid for me. And then of course all 4 Nykthos. Nykthos is essential to this deck operating at peak efficiency, and it does some tremendous things. Alright, and then the sideboard, we have, some removal. Singleton Hunt the Hunter, because Abzan strategies are popular and like other devotion strategies are pretty popular. 2 copies of Citizen Tactics, because I believe that it's one of the best removal spells for this deck. And it's great against things like Heroic, where sometimes they have multiple creatures out, and if you kill one of them, they'll just transfer all of their, they'll just like start casting auras and pump spells on the other one, and you don't really slow them down all that much. With like a single removal spell, Tactics is fantastic in the mirror. It's great if like Abzan aggro or green-red aggro taps out for a big threat instead of removing yours. It's a pretty great card. Its upper ceiling is very, very high. You get a lot of blowouts and a lot of like huge swings with this card. Couple of lightning strikes because it's good against the more tempo-based aggro decks, specifically Abzan aggro, where they're removing a lot of my creatures. So Tactics is fine, but not spectacular. Like if the opposing deck has a lot of removal, Tactics and Hunt the Hunter become rather situational. And so I wanted something more consistent in Lightning Strike to just take out their early threat, give me some time to build my my mana, and just draw into some of my bigger stuff to overpower them. Disciple is just some life gain. We can hit it off of Genesis Hydra. You know, pretty standard stuff. Gain us some life. Get us out of burn range against aggressive red decks. Negate and Reclamation Sage are ways of dealing with problems that we can't just attack through, essentially. Negate handles things on the stack. Reclamation Sage handles things once they're in play. You know, same general intent. Reclamation Sage gains us a lot of tempo because it gives us a Pip of Devotion and the 2/1 body. But other than that, they serve basically identical functions, just in a couple different ways. And then Nissa and Whisperwood Elemental serve basically the same function. They're Wrath Insurance, and they fill up the board really well. They're both great at winning us the game from low resource points. Just top decking them is pretty great. Whisperwood Elemental is better against the aggressive decks than Nissa, though, because it immediately makes 2 blockers. One of them being rather large, the main body. And then, excuse me. And then, like Whisperwood Elemental continues to generate value. It's harder for most aggressive decks to, well, not most aggressive decks, but it's harder for aggressive red decks to deal with because they don't always have Stoke the Flames. Like, they can just attack Nissa and kill her. She doesn't generate a ton of value if we're playing her on 5 in an aggressive, like against an aggressive deck, because she doesn't immediately create a blocker for herself, whereas Whisperwood Elemental is great on 5. The earlier we can get Whisperwood Elemental in play, the better. With Nissa, it's same principle, but we have to get her into play when we have an untapped land to animate. So they're both great against control because they offer insurance against wraths. If the opponent doesn't have a spot removal spell right away, they give us value against spot removal. So pretty good mix of cards for the various matchups in the sideboard. Most of them, with the exception of like Lightning Strike and Negate, really fit our main deck plan. And Strike and Negate are both extremely efficient, so I decided to include them anyways. Like they do things that we can't really do in green, so they're kind of necessary. Alright, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the videos. I'm going to be jumping into a daily here in just a second. So you'll get 4 solid rounds of action. Thanks for watching.